Hi, everybody. This is Venkat from Simply Coach, and you're listening to the Growth Dialogues podcast, the show that brings together experts in coaching, therapy, and consulting from around the world.
Hello, everybody. Our guest today is Raj Dharmaraj. Raj, I've known for over 30 years. We went to business school together, and he has a very interesting profile. He spent a fair amount of time in the corporate world with some of the world's largest tech companies. He was in an insurance vertical, subsequently did multiple HR roles, and including handling post mergers and acquisition HR. And then the coaching bug bit him, and he's a coach, very accomplished. He's also the chapter head of the Chennai chapter of the International Coaching Federation. So, welcome, Raj, to the show. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Venkat. Good to be here.
So, the first question, very obviously, Raj, is having been in the corporate world for a long time, when did you started getting interested in coaching?
Uh, so this is probably a lucky accident, if I were to call it that, Venkat. Maybe 8, 9 years ago,
Mhm.
and I just started out with HR in Cognizant, and as part of their talent assessment, leadership pipeline development program, they had been using executive coaching as follow up to leadership development plan, and they had decided to try an experiment to build an internal cohort of coaches. And I happened to be working with the CPO's office at that time and volunteered myself. So we signed up for an ACC program back in the day, about 8, 9 years ago. I was part of the first cohort of coaches that got trained under the ICF credentialing program, and really started back then. And thereafter, I stayed with the coaching internally in Cognizant through multiple roles. We always had a cohort of internal coaches, but, focusing on different areas, role transition primarily, some amount of specific development plan related behavioral interventions. And toward the last stint, we also interestingly started some group coaching, which is quite effective. So
Mhm.
it's been a journey, continued my own credentialing process through that, and the association with ICF, as you called out again there.
Okay, that's great. And quite a few of our viewers and listeners also are thinking maybe about the transitioning from the corporate world to a solopreneur like you, right? So, as you let's reflect back, what would be your top three learnings? What are the things that you would say that one should look out for or plan for?
That's an interesting one. So I think there are some commonalities. I think what the transition process probably maybe took me by surprise a little bit. I think the need to be able to hang one's coaching shingle out as a solopreneur, as you called it. Um, as an internal coach in corporate, you don't really have to market yourself, although there is a search and match process and a chemistry session. So the credentialing process helps to some extent in positioning one's capabilities, but it's probably the most challenging part of becoming a solopreneur, particularly when you're making a plan. I was lucky in the sense that I already had a network um, of coaches that were external independent coaches or working with coaching providers. And I was lucky enough to get some initial referrals through them. So I would say that's the biggest one. The second is that the coaching process is an ongoing journey. And I think even as a solopreneur, I see that the most successful coaches are the ones who keep investing in learning, uh,
Yeah.
not just staying with the credential. So I would call these out as the two big takeaways. And the networking that I referred to, I think that's an important part because you're always learning and sharing and potentially also meeting clients as you network. So these are a few things that spring to mind, Venkat.
Great. So we talked about the credentialing process, the very structured one that you go through. But one of the things I have seen as a coach myself is as we go along, there are things that you need to modify. There's no fixed methodology as such, right? It's a guidance. And in your experience, how do you sort of fine tune it to an individual client context? Or is it this is the way that we should do it? Or do you sort of make the allowance for a client's specific case?
Yeah. Again, thanks for calling that out because I think it's there is no one set methodology I think that would work for a client or a coach. And the larger your repertoire of coaching approaches, or if you like, um, tools at your disposal, that's one aspect. But you called out something specific, which is the type of client that you're dealing with. Each individual is unique, and each coach is unique. So I've found, and I think that most coaches do eventually do this, is you bring a bundle of experiences to any coaching conversation. So in my case, for instance, I come from a consulting background, which can be difficult for a coach to move away from because you're in advisory mode in consulting. In coaching, you're in listening mode. But there are commonalities that you can draw from. So, the active listening part, for instance, right? The ability to quickly draw inferences maybe and spot, certain signals. Those are common to both. So I would say that um, it has to be a very customized approach for each client. And what works with one client or a corporate client may not work for somebody else, in a completely different setting. So the more flexible and the wider the ability or the arsenal at the coach's disposal, I think the more effective it is. And I personally found that I try to bring to bear, or I do end up bringing to bear different parts of the learning that I was referring to. Right? So, for instance, I've had training in nonviolent communication, in cultivating emotional balance. So I try to bring those elements into my coaching conversations. Or I've done work with Philip Rosinski and his cultural orientations framework, which is a very unique and interesting way to look at how one coaches. And there are specific diagnostic tools and approaches that different coaches use at different points. But so I don't think there's one answer or one methodology. It's a gestalt of different approaches that one tries out.
So nicely put there, Raj. And as you say, right, we learn from several things, training, our own experiences. Now, one of the things which I've seen with many coaches who start out is they're very, almost like very specific to say, I'm a leadership coach, I'm a business coach. So the label which goes before the coach seems to be very important to them in calling it out. So you talked of the flexibility which is there. So is there a label that a coach needs to have, or is it something else? I mean, how do a coach introduce herself? Right?
Yeah. Again, something I've been grappling with as well, Venkat, and especially when you're positioning yourself, right? I think at one level there is a need to call out a niche or a focus area because there is a plethora of coaches and coaching needs out there.
Mhm.
So in the sense of being able to position and differentiate, sea of offerings, it does help to call out a few specific areas where one has expertise or chooses to focus on. And whether it's life coaching, career coaching, health and wellness coaching, I think it goes back to the earlier question you asked. It's a question of where the coach has specific abilities, building and layering on top of the coaching framework and methodology itself, or the coaching process itself, that probably enables him or her to position. And I think that's important. It also helps in a different way to solidify the credentials that one is bringing. For instance, if I was a wellness coach and I had also nutrition or fitness training on top of my coaching credentials, that's a powerful
Yeah.
positioning to have and credential to have. But I think the best advice or the best insight I got was, and I've been fortunate to, I'm a coach in learning part. very recently Solopreneur. So there's so much to learn beyond the credential. I think it's actually in the coaching that one actually ends up honing one's capabilities. And a master coach said that this in one of the conferences I recently attended, and said at some point all coaching is life coaching, because we bring to bear there's no different parts of our lives that we bring into focus into a coaching conversation at any point in time. So in that sense, I like to think, and I love that statement, and I keep using it. I think all coaching is life
I'm
coaching.
going to use that as well, Raj. All coaching is life coaching, right? And you also talked about both one-on-one coaching and group coaching. I'm interested to know, as you talk to some of your ex-colleagues in the corporate world, and I'm sure a lot of senior leaders you work with, in the sort of post-COVID world, what are the sort of challenges they come to you and say, "Hey, Raj, I need to work on this"? What would be the top 2 or 3 areas that they come to you for coaching?
So, and this is largely my experience, and maybe to some extent what I hear from the cohort that I work with, Venkat, and these are one or two developmental areas specifically for people making transitions into new roles or stepping up into a larger role. In some cases, it also to do with action learning plans, maybe at a more mid-level. In the recent past, and to your point about what's happening post-COVID, I'm seeing, and it's a great trend, by the way. What people refer to as more the democratization of coaching. Earlier, it was something that was reserved for maybe the C-suite, or maybe at least the executive leadership team. It was a perk or an additional on-tap uh, uh, intervention available to them. But with the democratization of coaching, I'm seeing that people are tapping into it at any level, and that going hand in hand with, I think, what is again referred to coaching as the intervention style, or coaching as a leadership style, which can be used at any level. And I think that's a great thing, because more and more people are having access to the power and possibility of coaching. So one, democratization. So you're seeing more specific individual requirements across companies. The other is the not one-to-one, but one-to-many. And in the same vein, I think group coaching or team coaching, which are both now getting popular in corporates, have the additional benefit of having the group or the team that you're working with act almost as a support group and accountability partner to each other in the learning and action process. So there's a lot of power to be unleashed from group and team coaching, which corporates are piggybacking on. Or
So, in that context, as this sort of coaching is changing, and like your call out of democratization a lot more, where do you see the role of technology in this process?
yeah, and again, it's a hot topic, Venkat, and I guess you guys are in the limelight in many ways in that space. I think the power of technology in coaching really was really evidenced in COVID, right? So it accelerated the democratization that I was talking to, because overnight, because we couldn't do in-person coaching, one had to switch to technology for communication and Zoom calls, and that, as soon as people saw that it was doable, it kind of opened up the market for both coaches and clients worldwide. So from being limited to whichever region or city I was in, overnight, my coaching market opened up across the world. And similarly for clients, they had access to coaches from across the world. So I think one level of technology intervention, or the basic level, sprang from that communication technology evolving. And in two ways for corporates, I think the rise of aggregators also helped and I'm talking about the well-known ones, for instance, no particular order, like BetterUp or Coach Hub, that piggybacked onto the ability to sync in with L&D systems and specific change or behavior interventions that they needed for their people. So to seamlessly link that and offer a search and match with coaches of a particular background. So that's been a powerful, I think, um, boost for coaching, particularly in corporate workspaces. For individual coaches, um, I think again there's been the obvious ones are where one starts the administrative of coaching, right from being able to do scheduling to do CRM, track your clients, maybe even do contracts, keep everything in one, the repositing of at a very basic level, all of which you guys did very early. But then moving further on, the ability to be able to track a life cycle of a coaching engagement, shape it with interventions like assessments, integrate it with interactions with the client, nudges or behavioral changes. All of those become a powerful way to augment, what would have otherwise been a fairly onerous load on the coach. And of course, there's the sales and marketing piece that you alluded to right in the beginning when you're a solopreneur, getting yourself out there, everything from creating a website to, your social media stream, all of that technology has been a big boost. And I think the most powerful and the emerging piece is, the ability to provide ongoing, maybe training and honing out one's skills using AI, for instance. I think there are a lot of exciting companies in that space. Right from basic recording to tracking whether you're speaking too much as a coach, what kind of keywords you're using, laying that back to you in a very effective way so that you can hone your coaching skills, or even to follow a particular coaching framework. You talked about models, right? So there are, coach technologists who allow you to check to see whether you're approaching the grow model or using an NVC framework background. So a lot more to come there. I'm not even going towards, VR type of applications in coaching where, one can actually be in the same space. But I think lots of exciting possibilities.
Couple of last areas to cover. So you mentioned about the use of social media by coaches, and there are hundreds and thousands of coaches worldwide, and each of them is trying to create a niche for himself herself there, right? So what are your thoughts on how does a coach build a brand? How does she stand out in the coaching marketplace?
Again, a question that anyone who is moving, particularly from the safety of a corporate brand to an individual brand, has probably faced. I think it's at two levels. Spend some time identifying your personal brand, and that's not necessarily what type of coaching I'm doing, but what do you as a coach and a brand stand for, and build a coaching persona, whether it's a company or an individual coaching brand around it. And the most successful solopreneurs I've seen have done that. They're consistent in the messaging that they have in terms of what services they provide, as well as what they bring to the table. Whether it's their coaching value, their coaching style, coaching niche. And then there's a rinse and repeat. So every one of their social media posts, whether they're doing just simple posts or, they are connecting with people or they're putting out podcasts, they reinforce that message in a consistent manner. And the consistency piece is also the other piece, that it has to be on a regular basis. So from a limited understanding of, what works on social media, as you said, I think you need to be consistent, both in terms of the regularity of posts, but also in terms of the messaging that you're putting out there. So these would be the couple of learning that I'm again still on a journey, Venkat. I think I'm far from it, but that would be my advice.
And you talked about the post-COVID scenario, and in some senses, some corporates are saying, okay, COVID was there, post-COVID is over. Now what next? And we've seen instances, people talking about getting back to office. Let's get back to how we were before COVID. So as a coach, how do we prepare for what is obviously a very uncertain world? If a coach has to hedge her bets, how does she plan for the next 3 to 5 years, especially for someone who's looking at this as the full-time career option?
So in in my experience, Venkat, I think while one can't predict, I'm a big believer that the hybrid model is here to stay. I don't think we'll ever go back to pre-COVID world where everybody's expecting. So to your specific question about how that might impact a coach who is now completely virtual, for instance, I think it's fairly straightforward in terms of at least planning a mix of clients, both locally accessible and continuing with the virtual networking. So it almost goes back to the networking element that I talked about. I think in each city and increasingly with organizations like the ICF, among others, I think there's an opportunity to network both at a coach level, but also at a customer level. So be seen at forums like if you're in the HR space or in the learning and development space. Sign up for organizations like your local chapter of ISTD or NHRD, SHRM, whatever. The more you get yourself out there, I think it also increases your own learning. And the other last piece is collaboration, because I find the coaching community to be extremely collaborative and networking. So you have a connect somewhere in Delhi who may say, I have a client in Chennai. But in my case, I'm based in Chennai, so is it possible? Do you have bandwidth to support? So collaborating and networking, both with your fraternity in terms of coaches, your potential customers, as well as allied. I think that would be a strong piece of advice.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you for being very generous with your time and joining us today. It's been very nice talking to you. Thank you.
My pleasure, Venkat. Thank you for having me.
So, Raj, I'm going to end this conversation by asking you what's a favorite coaching quote that you can share with us?
So, Venkat, I'm going to share this quotation that I heard at a conference from a very well-respected master coach from ICF, fantastic individual, and we were talking about the different types of coaching and the niches that people are catering to, and he made a beautiful point, and this is the quote, and he said, "All coaching is life coaching," and that is really one of my favorite quotes, because if you look at it, right, life situations are what you bring into a coaching conversation, whether it's work related, health related, relationship related. It's all life coaching. All coaching is life coaching.
Excellent. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Growth Dialogues. Don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you enjoy your podcast.